The U.S. prison industry has over 2 million prisoners. The majority of these inmates could have avoided prison if they only knew how the U.S. prison system operates.
So, I present to you Bullpen Therapy.
That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast. That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast. My grandfather had to deal with the cops. My great-grandfather dealt with the cops. My great-grandfather had to deal with the cops. And then my great-great-great-great. When it's gonna stop? That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast.
In one of the most shameful and little-known chapters of American history, generations of black Southerners were forced to labor against their will.
I have a brother about 14 years old. A man hired him from me and I heard of him no more. He went and sold him to McGree and they's been working him in prison for 12 months. I asked him to let me have him, but he won't let him go.
For a period of nearly 80 years, between the Civil War and World War II, black Southerners were no longer slaves, but they were not yet free. New laws targeted African Americans and effectively criminalized black life.
It was a crime in the South for a farm worker to walk beside a railroad. It was a crime in the South to speak loudly in the company of white women. It was a crime to sell the products of your farm after dark.
Anything from spitting or drinking or being found to be drunk in public or loitering in public spaces could result in confinement. So there was an over-exaggeration of African American criminality during this time period.
You have a group of people who are accustomed to have people serve them. Now, suddenly, these people are free. They own guns. You'd be as wary as hell. Because what you're worried is that people are going to take revenge. You also are worried that people aren't going to do any work anymore.
Most of the South's 8 million whites had not owned slaves. Poverty was widespread, and about a third of whites were illiterate.
Those individuals see blacks moving around, trying to get land, trying to improve themselves as competitors. They see a zero-sum game in which they're going to lose.
From almost the first moment, white Southerners were responding to try to put African Americans back into a position as close to slavery as they possibly could.
Southern states had a history of placing prisoners with industries that would bear the cost of guarding and housing them in exchange for their labor. Now states also began to charge fees, renting prisoners to companies by the month. The highest rates were for the strongest workers and longest sentences. In many labor camps, as many as a third of male convicts were boys younger than 16. Girls and women were also forced into labor.
And this system is one that I think in many ways needs to be understood as brutal in a social sense, but fiendishly rational in an economic sense. Because where else could one take a black worker and work them literally to death after slavery? And when that worker died, one simply had to go and get another convict. When you go to the 13th Amendment, one of the fascinating things about the text of that amendment is that it says that slavery is abolished, except in the case of a punishment for a crime. And within that wiggle room, what you see in it is that there's still the possibility of extending slavery, as it were, by another name.
Convict leasing becomes a new form of economic development in the South and a ubiquitous form of punishment for Southerners as the criminal justice system expanded.
I didn't know that people could be just picked up and put in jail. They could be lost in the system. Nobody knew where to find them. They could be buried in some grave somewhere and families still looking for them. Don't know where they are. I didn't know that the sheriff department could sell free black people to corporations, steel plants, and coal mines. It wasn't in the history books.
Bullpen therapy.